This is your Chargers linebacker, Daiyan Henley, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. This is your first time tuning into the show. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you were tuning in just now, literally seconds ago, the 2024 regular season schedule for the Los Angeles Chargers just dropped. And of all forms, The Sims. The Sims they decided to go with. They went away from the 2 years of the anime type format, and now they bring us the Sims format. Dan's going to bring it up here in just a second so that we can kind of go through this in the entirety of the video that just dropped. But looking forward to breaking down every single one of these matchups. If you guys have obviously been following during the day, there's been a couple rumors as far as when certain opponents were going to be coming out for the Chargers. But now we have everything in its entirety. We're going to go through and break down each one of these opponents and their corresponding storylines for the entire season, ready to go. On top of that, everybody in the chat, obviously, outside of the schedule, throw your comments in the chat. Let's talk about it. Let's have some fun. The arguably most built-up thing of the entire NFL season, the 2024 schedule release. Let's get to work. Dan Wolkenstein, let's go.
Let's go, Chargers fans. We got our schedule. And honestly, we might need some help from Chargers fans as we get through this. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Easter eggs and things we're going to have to dig through. As you guys and gals get info, you feed us as much as we feed you with this one. But we do know pretty confidently week one who the Chargers are going after. And look, everyone can talk about the 63-point. We can always talk about FTR. And if we're being completely honest, Chargers fans, you would attest to this. Thank you, Las Vegas Raiders. Thank you for what you've given for us. We wildly appreciate it. And also, you're welcome for your GM. But look, this is a live show, and we know how exciting these things are. We know why we're doing this. This is for the fans, with the fans. Folks, I'm sure you're not new to this. In the chat, give us your reactions. Give us your thoughts. Give us what you are looking forward to most in this episode, as well as the 2024 season. Jake, the Chargers did it. They dropped it of the Sims. Before we even get to our reactions, look, this is kind of flooded already, which is so fun. We love these live chats. Jake, before we get to that, real quick, let's pay the bills. Let's talk about our friends, and let's get action.
Yes. I'm going to get this out of the way so we can talk about nothing but schedule here for the next 60 plus minutes. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your summer sports this season. MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow from your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport that's out there. Head on over to the website today or use your mobile device to get into the action. That's BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, so Chargers fans, we have officially gotten the schedule release. Let's go ahead and pull this puppy up here so we can see what is in store for Chargers fans. Week 1 against the Raiders. Week 2, Carolina Panthers. Week 3 on the road to Pittsburgh. Week 4 at home against the Chiefs. A week 5 bye, which is interesting. Week 6 on the road, week 7 on the road against the Broncos and the Cardinals. Week 8 at home against the Saints. Week 9 at the Browns. Week 10, 11, 12, all in SoFi, looks like. Week 10 against the Titans. 11 against the Bengals. And 12 Monday Night Football, prime time against the Ravens. 13 and 14 on the road against the Falcons and the Chiefs. Chiefs on prime time. Home against the Bucks and the Broncos, then finishing off against the Patriots, and then sandwiched between week 1 and week 18 as everybody else, but week 1 and week 18 are all between the Chargers and the Raiders. And oh, by the way, in little small font, Jake, week 1, 2, 3 preseason, week 1 against the Seahawks, 2 against the Rams, and 3 against the Cowboys. Schedule's here. We finally know who the Chargers 2024 opponents are. We knew that, but we know when they're actually playing them. Jake, I haven't had a chance to even look at the anime stuff yet, but let's have some fun. Let's pull it up. Jake, what are your thoughts on the schedule? While have you folks in the comments, by the way, what is happening? You tell me.
You're really gonna like this. Honestly, this is as creative as it was with anime and the little jabs that they decided to take at each team. It's very similar with The Sims, and Dan, in particularly, one team and one, let's call pop icon in general. Is referenced as it relates to the Kansas City Chiefs in a great fashion. But no, in general, about this schedule as it's laid out right now, Dan, I love the fact that the team that they start off the season against in the Las Vegas Raiders is the team that you're going to end against. We'll get into more context there in week 1 in a second. Week 5 bye, I'm not over the moon about, even though those first 4 games, you could say outside of the standpoint of Kansas City, you sandwich that right in between 2 divisional games, which isn't bad. I definitely like the first 3 matchups for the Chargers. Again, we'll get into all of these in context and break them all down here in just a minute. But yeah, the week 5 bye, you want to fall traditionally somewhere in the middle, just in terms of time to rest and consecutive games and where your big road trips are going to be, just in terms of, though that dreaded I word that we, knock on wood, bringing up on this show because we don't like talking about those possible things. But in general, Dan, I like the schedule. That Baltimore Cincinnati stretch is going to be one hell of a stretch, sandwiching those 2 games close together, even though they're at SoFi, which I'm very happy that they ended up getting the draw in that circumstance. But that's going to be a nice 2-game punch, definitely to watch. The Harbaugh Bowl be in full effect. In general, the Chargers are, I think it's tied for 26th in the NFL in terms of overall strength of schedule as it stands right now. And as it was released earlier today, the Chargers actually traveled the most mileage of any team in the NFL, strength of schedule aside, which is strange for a team that doesn't even have to go internationally and play in one of the 5 international games, yet still has the most mileage. It's the Chargers, the Dolphins, and the Seahawks that are top 3 in overall travel mileage. But Dan, I love this. I loved the opponents in general when we already knew what they were months ago. And in terms of how the schedule laid out, I've had some really big questions in previous schedule releases, especially last year. When you looked at those last 6 games of the season that the Chargers had that stretch on, that was a nasty stretch. And ultimately, you saw what that ended up doing to them in the record column. But this final stretch of the season, yes, you have your divisional games, the games against Tampa Bay and the Patriots basically sandwiched in between them. So you basically go 3 divisional games in your final 5 weeks of the season, which, is more than what you would expect, but still, from the standpoint of how this is compared to what it was last year against teams that were in your division and out of your division, it was really tough. I'm much more in favor of this. I think that's a good finish to the Chargers season. Looking at this again, that Titans, Bengals, Ravens, hell, you could even throw in the Browns in that one. That's 4 really physical football teams.
Honestly, Browns, Titans, Bengals, Ravens, Falcons, Chiefs. That's a stretch.
Yeah.
That is a stretch of 6 teams? I'm
not
sure about the Titans. It's kind of a new age. Bengals, Ravens, Falcons, Chiefs. You could think
of it that way. Mike Vrabel is no longer there. I would traditionally say that I don't know how much drop off in terms of physicality, because defensively, in terms of talent-wise goes, they still got some monsters on that defense. But
sure,
if you're looking for the hard stretch to say that, okay, where is the challenge going to be for Jim Harbaugh and this team? That's it, right in the middle of the season. And it's kind of another reason why I'm not in favor of the week 5 bye. But hey, unfortunately, we don't make the schedules. We don't get to pick when our teams have their bye weeks. But that's my early view of it as it stands right now. Dan, yours before we get into each one of these games and break them all down.
Well, honestly, I looking at the schedule, I love that they go off the jump with the Raiders. I think there is a lot of history, obviously, a lot of emotions. I think SoFi is going to be bumping on that game. Panthers, Steelers. They have a legitimate chance. That's an easy-ish against Steelers. That's a tough one, but they could go 2-1, 3-0 to start off the season, which I think would be a good start for this Chargers team. Home against the Chiefs. I think it's important to have that game first. I like the idea of being home against the Chiefs with Jim Harbaugh in this new era. Broncos, Cardinals, those should be 2 wins. Follow up with the Saints. I think that's probably a win too. That's probably a 3-game stretch. You probably got to go at least 2-1. Arguably, they should go 3-0. But we talked about it. Browns, Titans, Bengals, Ravens, Falcons, Chiefs. That's hard. Falcons are no cakewalk anymore. They have a quarterback now. They have 2 quarterbacks now, actually. Chiefs, tough, obviously. Ravens, Harbaugh Bowl. That's going to be hard. ESPN, Monday Night Football. Week before that is the Bengals. And the Bengals last year didn't have a quarterback. And I'm thinking of the Browns. Bengals are always a good team. And we'll see what happens. No more Joe Mixon. Titans, no clue what the Titans are going to look like, honestly. Browns, on paper, they have the best roster in the NFL. On paper. The quarterback is the wild card. Not sure. But you hope that the game and the season does not come down to that week 18. Because the Chargers and Raiders have played spoilers to each other over and over and over again. I mean, yes, and sure. A part of you is like, yeah, whatever. I'll welcome chaos. I'll welcome madness. But in theory, you got the Bucks, Broncos, Patriots, week 15, 16, 17. Excuse me, week 16, 17, and 18. I had that right the first time. The 3 games prior to the end of the season. You got a pretty good opportunity to make a good stretch. We'll talk about our season predictions here, by the way, at the end of the show. Jake, let's get to some of these questions as we continue on real quick. Here we go. Roland says, unleash the bolt. We've got 1-0 to start, which we'll get here in a second. Some of our juicy mashups, things that we're looking for. A lot of people are not excited about the week 5 bye, which I don't blame them. I think I'd rather have that somewhere sandwiched in the middle, week 8, 9, 10, something like that. A lot of people are saying don't like the bye. People are already giving their predictions. We got 12-5. Girthy Guitarist says, I was going to go to Pittsburgh, but I have an event that weekend. Damn. Sorry. Sweet jumps. No European games. How many primetime? Looks like you have 3 primetime games. We've got the game against the Cardinals on ESPN Plus. Excuse me, on ESPN. Yeah, ESPN Plus. We've got the Ravens, primetime ESPN. And we've got the Chiefs, primetime Sunday Night Football. Am I missing any? Those 3?
I believe you got it.
3 primetime games. Do we make anything, Jake, of the lack of primetime games? You've had a bunch in years past.
I thought, honestly, just because of the Harbaugh effect in general, that they were going to maybe get, because you put the line, what was it, yesterday, at over under 3.5. I actually picked the over because I thought Harbaugh was going to bring that type of a draw that they would want to see. And, just taking in the Chiefs matchup, the Harbaugh Bowl, I felt like you were at least going to get 2 more primetime matchups out of there. But still, nonetheless, the Chargers have had plenty of primetime games over the past 2 years, and it doesn't necessarily translate to wins and losses because at the end of the day, that was why Jim Harbaugh was brought here. And that's what we're concentrating on. And Dan, as we go through this, I know you haven't gotten a chance to watch much of it, but you got to roll some of these clips. I can tell you where to start and stop, but the non-anime schedule for the Chargers definitely did not stop the shade from being thrown at each one of their opponents this season. It is fantastic. Some people think it sucks, but if you pause it in certain areas and you just look for the little subtleties as they have dropped in the background, it's true to form for what they have done the last 2 years.
Okay, so real quick, let's look at these a little bit. I have it up on the screen here. What are you? Oh, that's loud. So first off, we've got the clouds. Look at them, right? So I'm terrible with some of this stuff. I don't know. I'm gonna need help here. What's this on the right-hand side?
Look, I wasn't honestly looking at that, but this part of the schedule obviously can kind of speak for itself in terms of the rivalry that has been going on between the Chargers and the Raiders. Next up, the Carolina Panthers in week 2. Keep going. The Steelers in week 3, Dan. If you recognize that image, that next image has become a very, very big meme that has been out there in the social media for a long time. And obviously here is now Russell Wilson moving from Denver to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this it says Broncos country, let's move on the truck for Russell Wilson. Keep going through some of this.
Oh, what's this one?
That part I didn't get so much. keep again, just keep going through some of these.
Look at Justin Fields behind him.
I didn't catch every single Easter egg. This one's great, Dan. This is all you. Just play this one the entire day. You got Travis Kelce, you got Jason Kelce on their podcast that has obviously blown up. But keep going. They're both talking about squirrels, and there's Taylor Swift.
There she is
outside. There's Taylor Swift outside. And keep going. Because, of course, Travis gets up from his seat, just gets right up off the podcast and sees Taylor outside and says, okay.
Look at the album covers in the back. That's great.
He's got them all. He's got them all scattered everywhere. Keep going through this, Dan, because he's going there's like, oh, let's follow out on my private jet. Let's get the hell out of here. Okay.
Oh, this is too much.
On to the next week. Okay, the bye week. So Justin gets his briskets. Justin gets his golfing going on. This is good.
Okay. Fishing, doing his thing.
He's having a great time. This was great. To Walmart for the Denver Broncos when they go to Denver in week 6. So keep playing through some of this.
Good Lord. Okay. Let's see. We got Judy, Simmons.
These are all the wide receivers.
Return center.
Yes. These are the wide receivers. These are some of the free agents that have walked out the door. This is at the Cardinals, Dan. Yeah, you keep going. Okay,
so Josh is our guy, then Kyler's our guy. Okay. Oh, whoa! What's happening?
The Saints. So now you got Mardi Gras.
Bourbon Street. Love this.
Yes, Bourbon Street. Mardi Gras going down here.
Oh my goodness.
This is great. Now pause it right here. So look at the options so the guy picks up the camera and he's looking at his options. So everything, of course, is relatable to the Saints. You have Bounty Gate, the Minneapolis Miracle, the no PI call, and then finally, who do they end up? Yeah, who do they click on? Kevin James as Sean Payton. Now this one's good. I like this one because I had to watch this one just a couple times just to get the subtleties in this. So at the Browns, week 8, play this through a little bit, Dan. I'll tell you.
Factory of sadness, and at least we're not Detroit.
Yes, so keep playing through this. I'll tell you when to stop. Okay, right here. Right here. If you notice the boxes, look at the names on the boxes that are here. They're former Browns quarterbacks. You have Kaiser, you have Whedon, you have Couch. There's a bunch of Couch back there. And these guys are basically just packing up all those jerseys of the previous Browns quarterbacks that have come through.
Oh my goodness. Johnny Manziel is there as well.
Yes, keep rolling.
This is great. Oh my goodness. You forget how many quarterbacks they had.
Now,
the Titans
versus the Titans. I love this one. Pause it right here. Okay, now look at the names that are on that wall. Remember the Titans video that came out last year that got a lot of praise for their release videos when they were going around and they were asking people like, hey, do you know this symbol? Do you know this symbol? This was the names of people that they thought were those teams. So you have Lightning McQueen, which somebody called the Chargers. You have the Baltimore Orioles, who somebody called the Ravens. You have the 49ers, 69ers Stars that ended up coming through there. So they used all those names that people had said those teams were. And then if you notice up here in the left-hand corner, Dan, it says Repo Man has come to claim your last remaining asset, which I would assume that what he's claiming there is a statue of a one Derrick Henry.
Oh my goodness. This is great. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's take a pause for a sec. Let's listen to some of these comments in the chat. Jake, let's go into, let's see. Lunatic Gaming says, I wish it anime again. The Sims seemed lazy at last minute.
We talked about this. I would not have wanted to see anime part 3. And yes, visually, aesthetically, does it look cooler without question? Like if you were able to pull off something with like X-Men or something like that, like hell, like, hey, I'm all for that. I'm not going to tell you to quit that. But in order for the Chargers to social media team, who once again is just so fantastic, to throw a little bit of the haze that they have garnered so much attention for on the schedule release videos, I loved this idea. I love this idea, and it was done in a very simplistic fashion. Like I said, tailor everything to the team that you are now, and your head coach just make it simple. They went simple with, some hot sauce on it for each one. They pulled back the animation a little bit, went a little bit more retro, but they still came with the spice. And I like that.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all, honestly. I think it's good. I did not want them to do the anime thing again. And Taylor says, by the way, that Sims video was not lazy. Holy moly. And again, I think this is one of those where it takes some time to simmer a bit. And you start getting more and more and more of the Easter eggs as you go through. And you and I are going to go through. And Jake, you can kind of tell me, we're going to continue on as we go. Some of the Easter eggs that maybe we didn't see. And to folks in the chat, if you've gone through and looked at them and you've seen Easter eggs that we've missed, please help us out here. Forgotten Locale says, I would have rather just had Ben Herbert reading the schedule off a piece of paper. Jake, you talked about that. Maybe Jim Harbaugh just is like, here you go, sticky notes.
Dude, Jim Harbaugh with a sledgehammer. And before he breaks a brick that shows off each opponent's logo and says one of his quirky quotes like, "That's the enemy of speed," bang. "Who's got it better than us? Not them," bang. I would have been totally fine with that too. But again, there's a plethora of ideas that I'm sure that they went through. But again, the Chargers coming with the hot sauce just makes this so much better, because this is the haze that garners Kyle Brandt to go on social media yesterday and says, hey, everybody who's making schedules right now, this is who you have to contend against. Their haze that they have thrown at other teams for a schedule release the last 2 years is the reason he's saying that. So yes, I get it from a standpoint of going from the anime version and everything looking ultra cool to Sims where it's like, okay, just basic. Still, to think about how they did this and then figure out the haze to throw at every single team that they go through, it's a testament to the work that they put in, because they put a lot of work into it, and I love it.
It's also pretty darn recent. We are not a political show, obviously. But someone in the comments, putting Harrison Butker in the kitchen is absolutely beautiful. I think that is in reference to the latest speech that he made.
Yeah.
Talking about where women, I don't want to say belong, where he believes women should be prioritizing their lives and da-da-da-da-da. Got some backlash, support, whatever. The Chargers put him in the kitchen.
Look, if you want to say that anything was a last-minute decision, this may have been it right here, but whoa. I mean, what a last-minute decision.
I can't believe they did that.
I mean, that's for the Buccaneers, but I didn't happen to catch that in the other videos, if that's ended up where it was. But still, it's just like, again, the haze that they come through with each one of their opponents, Dan. And you could bring it back up and continue right where we left off, because I want to get through this before we actually go through each storyline.
Did I mess that up? That was not okay. So that Baker in the kitchen?
That was Baker in the kitchen.
Okay. All right. That's not as funny then. Because it would have been
still.
It's still good.
The haze that they throw at the Chiefs in general is still good.
Yes, I'll go back and look at that. I'm not sure where Harrison Butker in the kitchen is, but we'll go back. Real quick. Okay, let's go to some of the juicier matchups that we are interested in. Right off the bat, you and I kind of talked about it, Jake. Week 1 against the Raiders, I think, this goes without saying, going to be pretty epic. And I was at that game when the lightning and thunder went off, and you saw a lot of the Chargers fans kind of see it as like a good omen, so to speak, and people went nuts. And then that Chargers team just put an absolute kicking. This could have a similar nature. I can imagine, we all know this, like Chargers and Raiders games are always epic. Raiders contingency always shows out everywhere, especially in Los Angeles. And we know week 1, Chargers are going to want to have everybody there. All the Chargers fans are going to be excited. Starting off the season with the win, you got Jim Harbaugh, you got the Tom Telesco, you got a lot of Chargers that are now on the Raiders. You've got obvious history in the AFC West. This one's crazy. I love that this is week 1, right off the jump, with a lot of intensity, sort of.
Dan, while I'm going to talk about this, I want you to pull this up. I want you to fast forward to the schedule video to the final week in 18, because this references what I'm about to say right now in terms of kicking this off. For so long, and even so much today, everybody's tried to clap back at the Chargers and just post the 63-point shellacking that the Raiders gave the Chargers last year. And in many different ways.
Real quick, time out. P.S. There is Harrison Butker in the kitchen, by the way. When I was going through fast forwarding, found him.
Oh, it was during the credits. It was during the credits.
So it's even less subtle. It's right there.
Wow.
Okay, continue. I apologize.
Okay. Anyways, that's always just been the flack, is that they're just trying to throw that back. So yeah, pull it up to here. There's the game right there that they decided to put in, that the Chargers are just getting hammered by the Raiders last season. We all know how that went. Justin Herbert wasn't playing, but that game, first of all, again, where they're putting them watching this game.
Who's walking by?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's Telesco or who that's supposed to be.
See the nameplate here? Telesco.
There you go. But what that game.
Oh, deputy on duty, Tom Telesco.
What that game sparked off for the Chargers franchise to where it sits today is absolutely insane. Because yes, it was one of the worst embarrassing losses in Chargers franchise history. And then a day later, Tom Telesco, Brandon Staley are both fired. The Chargers then go on to subsequently lose out the rest of the season. And then by a change of fortune from the front office and an aggressive nature from the front office, they go out and they land the biggest whale that is out there in Jim Harbaugh. And what has Jim Harbaugh essentially done since he has arrived here? He has created a different culture. He has created his own staff based off of guys that he has had under his belt, his strength and conditioning coach, Ben Herbert, Jesse Minter, a plethora of other guys that have come in here to revamp this defense, to give it a new identity. You bring in Joe Ortiz on top of that. And to think that a game like that, the team that just absolutely obliterated you, your franchise went out and signed the GM of the team you just beat. So there are so many interconnecting stories as it relates to the Raiders. To start off this season with those storylines and to end it with those is just phenomenal. Now, if you get down to player standpoint, this is a huge test for Joe Alt right out of the gate to go against Max Crosby. You know that both of these teams are going to be coming for each other to play week one. And Jim Harbaugh has to be chomping at the bit with this. You would probably think that Tom Telesco has a little bit more added incentive to this, even though he's not out on the field. But for them to get a win in this game based off of everything that has taken place, I love this. I love the fact that this is who they start the season against based off of what happened last year.
Oh, man, Chargers are cooking on this one. So, Matthew Dalton, there's a barcode in the video for the Raiders one. If you go to the barcode, it takes you to the Chargers site, and it says, Chargers fans, click here. Raiders fans, click here. Chargers fans CTA goes directly to sign up, I believe, for season tickets. The Raiders CTA goes to the World Clown Association's website. With new membership sign up, you can send a letter. They're in Michigan. Send the email to manager@worldclown.net, or you can give them a call at 219-487-5317. Oh, thank you so much. This is the best part of these, is you go through the Easter eggs and they just never disappoint. Keep the Easter eggs coming and we'll see what we can do to put it up here. Yes, so go enjoy that one, Raiders fans. So, Jake, week one we talked about. That was probably one that Chargers fans haven't had on their calendar, hoping that it was a good one because they obviously want to show up. Week two was against the Panthers.
Which there's some. First of all, I thought that the Chargers did the Panthers dirty today with their trademark Pop-Tart tweet thread when they just showed a smashed Pop-Tart of the Carolina Panthers. Didn't even bother to put a flavor on it, just basically showed it under a piece of plastic, and that was it. But I think there's some interesting story matchups here. Obviously, you have Bryce Young coming into year 2. He's got a few more weapons at his disposal for hopefully how he's going to take his career in a different direction, but you're still dealing with a rookie head coach in Dave Canales. And in general, I think that this is, it's a good matchup for the Chargers early on. I would predict that they would end up getting a win at this game. But there's some interesting storylines to take away from here. Specifically, you got 2 young quarterbacks and Bryce Young coming into year 2, and early on having to go up against Justin Herbert and the run game that Jim Harbaugh is going to employ on this team. We'll see what happens. Dan, give me week 3. This one I love. And this one's going to be a smash mouth game. And I say that just from the standpoint of, Pittsburgh and the Chargers have always had an interesting, lengthy rivalry with one another. And traditionally, over the better part of the last 20 years, Pittsburgh has been more victorious in that circumstance. But Dan, if you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers draft, there's 3 guys on this roster that they drafted that we talked about a lot. One being Zach Frazier, another one being Roman Wilson.
3. Yeah, the first 3 picks.
Roman Wilson, who's another interesting one because Jim Harbaugh is going to be very familiar with him. And then Patrick Wilson, the linebacker.
Peyton Wilson.
So I think what Pittsburgh is trying to do, and obviously you have Russell Wilson, who the Chargers are extremely familiar with during his time in Denver. I guess my question would be, because I thought about this as soon as I saw that this was going to be the week 3 matchup, because everybody, you can't forget that you have Justin Fields in the wings for Pittsburgh as the QB2. I guess my question is, how much grace period would you give to Russell Wilson if he started off, let's just say hypothetically, if worse came to worse, that he started off the year 0-2, do you still think he makes it to week 3 to start for the Steelers?
Yikes. Maybe. I'm curious. I don't know about that leash. That's a good question. How long are they giving him? Probably not long. I mean, I don't know. That's a wild situation. But at the same time, as much as you want to poo-poo it, the Steelers have been competitive and perennial playoff teams or borderline playoff teams with horrendous quarterback play. Like, horrendous. Give them just a little below average quarterback play, and I think that team is pretty darn good. And so,
their record last year with Kenny Pickett was actually very impressive. And again, that's what they do defensively. We talked about some of the early tests for Joe Alt in the early part of this season with Max Crosby. Yeah, you got another one in TJ Watt that's going to come this week for sure.
Yeah, and this is another reason why I believe the Chargers went out and went Joe Alt versus Malik Neighbors or whoever else, because you're going up against some elite pass rushers. And because they only have one great offensive tackle, when you're going up against duos like this, they could easily just go to the other side. And we've seen that happen. And when they go to the other side and there isn't good pass protection and the running backs and tight ends aren't doing their job, it causes havoc. Now, whatever they have, whatever team, doesn't matter what side they go to, they're going to have a stellar offensive tackle, either Joe Alt on one side or Rashawn Slater on one side. So in this matchup, you've got TJ Watt, who is an all-world player, now having to go up against someone who I consider also at least Pro Bowl caliber, if not better, in either Slater or Joe Alt. And then the other side, right? Chargers defense versus their offense. You look at the Chargers defense now. Bud Dupree, former Steeler. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Morgan Fox, Tuli. That's just the edge group.
Physical.
They are going to wreak havoc on opposing offenses, especially ones who get a little rattled, like a Justin Fields or like a Russell Wilson. That's, I think, and we talked about the formula for this Chargers team winning. They're going to rely way more on the defense than we have seen in years past. And so this is a matchup that I like. Another one, Jake, right afterwards. Bing, bang, boom. Week 4. Whew. Chiefs at Chargers.
This is who I was hoping that they were just going to open the season with. Just right out of the floodgates. Just give it to Harbaugh. Just give him the, Just give them the champions right out of the gate, and let's go to work, and let's see what happens. Now, I mean, again, if you want to look at this as far as a tough 2-game stretch, you could look at that because, again, like I said, the Pittsburgh game is going to be a very physical game.
Yep.
I don't care who the quarterback is. It's going to be a very physical game. It's probably going to be low scoring, but that's probably what Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter are looking for in that circumstance. They probably expect that right out of the gate. And then you have to face the Chiefs the next week, right before your bye. This is going to be a big test for the Chargers. This is what we've been waiting for. How many times do we need to talk about the Chiefs winning the division? How many more years are we going to have to do this? This is one of the biggest reasons why change came and why you went out and got Jim Harbaugh, was to have a change in direction and a change in the division in terms of who runs it. Now, as of now, until someone takes it away from them, it is still the Kansas City Chiefs. But the Chargers get 2 cracks at them. And the best path forward to getting to the playoffs is winning your divisional games. So you get this right before a bye. And let's go to work. Let's go to work.
Yeah, some of the comments here. I like Chiefs at week 4. By then, they should have their kinks all worked out. I agree. Alex says we need to get better. Everybody, every day, can try and strive to get better. Chargers, yourself.
Attack today with enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
Yep. Nick says, wipe that sly grin out of Mahomes' face. I hope the Chargers can do so on that game. I think that's going to be a big one. Forgotten Locale says, the Harbaugh Bowl on Thanksgiving would have fed families. Honestly, probably literally would have.
I mean, look, that on Thanksgiving, if that was like the night game, that would have been great. It would have been great.
It would have. But honestly, like, I genuinely do not care about primetime games anymore because I've seen the Chargers and I don't, a lot of this, and I think Chargers fans, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks in the chat, but a lot of this is, you want to see your team in primetime, right? It speaks to how good they are, the talent, and you want to put Justin Herbert there in the limelight because Justin Herbert balls out in the limelight in primetime. Sure. A lot of it sometimes, and I've kind of thought about this, it kind of screams like we want more attention on the Chargers. And in my opinion, I want that attention on the Chargers when it's earned and when it's deserved. And quite frankly, this Chargers team does not deserve the primetime attention this year. The only reason that it is seemingly wanted or felt earned is because of Jim Harbaugh, period. And I like the idea of going to work with your lunch pail. You don't care about the attention. Don't care about the spotlight. Do your job. Make them feel you. On to the next week. And let the results dictate what happens. I don't care about the limelight anymore. Win football games. Let it happen.
You had one of your most embarrassing losses last year in primetime. To the point where I don't think that Al Michaels wanted to bail at halftime if you listen to his commentary during that game.
We all did.
Like, everybody was just so out of it because it was so one-sided. As Dan's point said, we've seen the Chargers with a lot of primetime games over the last couple of years, and what has it actually gotten them? Don't give a damn about that. I could wake up for 17 weeks straight and the Chargers are playing at 10 a.m. every morning. If it translates to a 12-4 record, give it to me.
Yes. Yeah, Greer the Guitarist says, when you get to the playoffs, all games are prime time. Let's focus on that. That's probably the message that Jim Harbaugh's saying. He's probably like, I could give 2 shits about prime time right now. Like, get me to the primetime games that matter, i.e. primetime. Let's see. I agree on the primetime game, says Age. All Chargers games will be primetime in my house. Amen, brother.
There you go.
Amen. Without words. Limelight is for the playoffs. Let's make it there. Agreed. Next juicy one for me, Jake. Week 7. Chargers at Cardinals.
I love the players that you selected here, Dan. Very sly of you, because what different universe would it be if at the end of last season,
yep.
If there was one made field goal out of 3 that were missed, could the Chargers have ended up with the number 4 overall pick? And in a different universe, would they have gone Marvin Harrison Jr. if they landed in that spot. So now, as much as Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter both just months ago talked about what a pain in the ass that it was to prepare and cover for Marvin Harrison, they're going to have to do it again. But you know something? The Chargers wide receiver core in general obviously looks different than what we have been used to over the past decade. Yes, there's no Keenan Allen. Yes, there's no Mike Williams. But from everybody that we have talked to, and as we have seen this roster built out, there is a theme that they want to do. There is a way that they know that they can win football games without an elite wide receiver core. And the gentleman that Dan decided to put up for the Chargers in this particular image, in one Ladd McConkey, may be the team's leader in targets by the time that we get to week 7 for this game. So this is going to be a very interesting matchup. If you look at the Cardinals draft in general, I think they did a very, very good job of stocking up for their team. So
yeah,
don't poo-poo this just because of who the quarterback is. I still think this is going to be a really competitive game. I'm looking forward to it.
Honestly, when you said that, I was actually going through looking at their draft selections. Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously. Then they went out and got Max Melton, who was one of our favorites. Trey Benson, you were very high on. Isaiah Adams, they went for the interior offensive lineman. Tip Raymond was one that we both were talking about. They get one of my favorites in the cornerback group with Elijah Jones. Then they get another safety that I was really high on, and Dadrian Taylor Demerson. Christian Jones, the late round flyer. That's a pretty darn good draft haul.
Dan, real quick, did you skip week 6? I just noticed this in the chat.
I did. I'm going to the juicy ones. I'm not going in order week by week by week by week. But okay, I can go back to week 6 if they would like.
I think they were with you because you were going in order there for a minute. So that's why everybody was asking.
Well, okay. So the fun part about this is Jake and I put the games that we felt were juiciest prior to the week to week schedule release coming out. And then, as you'll see here in a bit, it went back to back to back, in this case, back to back times of games that we loved. But as we'll see here in a second, we got juicy matchups week after week after week right after each other. So let's see. Do you guys predict win totals or no? We have not, but we will at the end of this show predict what we feel is happening. I'm curious to see who is the optimist versus the pessimist of us two, Jake, because typically I'm the optimist. But as of late, Jake's been in his feelings and been all happy giddy and more optimistic than me at times.
Hey, sometimes change brings about a difference.
Fair. To get to, folks, so we went week 3. So we did week 1 with the Raiders. Week 2 is against the Panthers. Yes. Then week 3, 4 back-to-back with juicy matchups, Chargers, Steelers. Week 5 is the bye week. Week 6 is the Broncos. Cardinals, we just talked about. Saints, Browns, Titans. Anything particular about those 3?
The Browns, again, I think, are going to be a sneaky competitive team. I think what change has taken place with them over the last couple of years, I think they have obviously relied on their run game a lot better, and that has translated to wins. You could obviously, from a quarterback standpoint, that still is yet to be determined, but what they have defensively is still competitive. They have turned into a physical football team. So I'll be interested to see when the Chargers end up playing them, where the Browns are at that point of the year in terms of how they're doing. I would still expect, if they're in a good position, that you're going to see a good game out of that one. And obviously, the Saints, anytime that you get an opportunity to play against your former divisional rival and Derek Carr, which, going back to the Pop-Tart references from earlier today in the Chargers, it was probably my second favorite in terms of what they had in the thread, the brown cinnamon sugar, and then they decided to insert the makeup and eyeliner right next to it.
The mascara or whatever that was for the Saints and Derek Carr. Good Lord. Yeah, Saints, Brown, Titans. That's a stretch of the Chargers. If they're going to make the playoffs, they're going to have to go at least 2-1. They should go 3-0 in that stretch, in my opinion. All right, $1.99 donation for Matthew Dahl. Question: over or under max sacks against the Raiders? 2.5.
2.5
total for the season?
No. I think
this season, I'm putting my money all on the freaking over.
I think he may just be talking about week 1. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Matthew, but I think you're just talking about week 1 in this circumstance.
Let's say week 1.
I think the line is good. Based on the players that you've selected, I don't know, because don't poo-poo Tuli. I think Tuli's going to get on some of that action. Something's telling me that Tuli is going to contribute to that in terms of the overall stack. So if we're going as far as, if you just said the edge group, yes. Limiting it to Mack and Bosa, I'm not so sure. But you give it to that edge group, especially now after adding Bud Dupree just a week ago, I think that I would go over in that circumstance.
I think I'm going to go under, but that's not because Khalil Mack's not going to go crazy, but it's because they now have edge group 4 deep that I think they can wreak havoc with, keep them fresh. I'm going to go under, but that might actually be a good thing for the Chargers.
Dan asked me this question earlier this week, shortly after Bud Dupree was signed, and remind me of the line that you gave me, Dan. I think it was 34 or 35.
I think it was. So I had the total sacks of all 4 players last year. I think it was 34 total or 37, one of the two. But over under total, 34 and a half sacks for the entire edge group, those 4 players for the season.
Which I went the over. And it wasn't necessarily based off of what I'm thinking that each one of those players are going to contribute, because there are some that obviously are getting up there in age. Others have battled injuries. But what I'm putting more of my money in and trusting that over line is the man in charge of the defense and how he's going to deploy them. Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter know that they need to get after the quarterback. And I think it's proof of why they went out and they signed a player like Bud Dupree, who was a 16 games, started basically every game for the Falcons last year. And as a starter with 6.5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles, he comes into this Chargers edge room now as essentially edge 4. That's all of a sudden a lot of juice in that edge room. So I'm basing it more on Jesse Minter's deployment of these guys, the right type of rotation, keeping them upright, breathing, able to last the 60 minutes. That's what I'm basing it on.
It's fair. That's fair. A couple questions here, Jake. Question to comment. Question: over under total interceptions by the bye, over under 3.5. So first 4 games: Raiders, Panthers, Steelers, Chiefs. So think about the quarterbacks for a second, Jake. Quarterbacks, Aiden O'Connell or
depending on which one you
Gardner
start
Minshew.
with. If it's Gardner Minshew, if it's Aiden O'Connell, I say you're at least good for 1.
Okay. Panthers got Bryce Young, and Nate got absolutely wrecked last year.
I think you can get another one out of that one. Pittsburgh's going to be interesting because I could think that Mike Tomlin could be taking a very similar approach to kind of what the Chargers are doing with Russell Wilson. Rely heavy on the run game. Rely on your defense to give it back to you. Come with a very smash mouth type of offense.
Let's go on the Trent Dilfer route.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly like that. So that one might be tough, and it is tough to predict that because you have so many new faces in the secondary. And trust me, Dan and myself are just as encouraged as anybody else that's out there who got a chance to listen to Steve Klinkscale speak earlier this week in terms of how he wants to deploy his corners in this, to have every single one of them play nickel and play outside. Same goes for the safeties that they want to have them come in and be versatile. Should the infamous I word that we don't like mentioning on this show for obvious reasons, but it was because of those very reasons, so that you have guys that are familiar enough with the system. So I can't say with confidence that I could take the over on that one. And again, it's more so from the standpoint that Asante Samuel Jr. is now your longest tenured cornerback in that room. Christian Fulton hopefully develops into a very nice reclamation project. He sounds like he's motivated, but you've got a lot of new faces in this cornerback room that need to come in and produce.
Yes. And Charles, the I word that we're referring to, it rhymes with schmingery.
Yeah.
But we're not going to say it because we've seen it too often on this show for years now. Yeet skeet. So I was going to let it slide, but the listeners and viewers are not. I believe Jake was trying to say throw shade.
Yeah.
And
sorry.
instead was throwing Taylor Swift, Lavender Haze everywhere.
Sue me. I'll take the L on that one.
You'll take the eye on that one.
Yeah.
The Doobie Doo says, do you guys think we'll have a top 5 or 6 defense this season with what we added? Okay, let's be careful.
Go ahead.
Be careful here. So I think Chargers fans, and myself included, a lot of times we get real excited and we see a shiny new toy, and all of a sudden we think it's going to go from rags to riches. Remember how bad this defense was last year.
Just last year.
Snap the line since 2018. I mean, you let me know.
Yes.
2018, 2021, I believe was the last time. And even that. Anyways, Jake, we talked about this all throughout the last few seasons. Can we just see average? Like, just give me average. Similar to like what we talked about with the offensive line for a while. Can we just get average? Do I think they're going to be a top 5 defense this year? No, I don't. Because we've talked about this. They had so much they had to do for this roster. I can't remember a roster having this much turnover, let alone roster plus staff. So I think they're going to be much better. And I think that they will be I would put money on them being a top 10 to 20 for sure, in my opinion. I don't think they're at top 5 yet.
No, I would agree.
As much as they've done, as much as they've built, do you feel comfortable at the safety depth? Do you feel comfortable about the cornerback room right now? Do you feel comfortable and do you feel confident and bullish about the interior defensive line? I don't. That's what makes a top 5 defense. That's what when you have no holes. They still have holes. Now, are they huge ones? You could argue. There's still time. There's still free agency. I get it. But right now, I cannot say they're going to be top 5 or 6 defense. Am I wrong here?
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. And because there's been so much turnover, and just from player personnel and now from coaching staff. I mean, literally, it was gutted down to the formations. Let's not forget in terms of the coaching personnel. Thankfully, there are some, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that are familiar with coaching with one another. So you're hopefully trying to give them as much as a leg up as you can in that circumstance. But when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert, I don't think that you need to have a top 5 defense in order to win games. I understand that this whole philosophy for what this team is going to do in terms of being a more physical, aggressive team. Talked to someone today that talked about just in terms of how about playing with a lead where you can lean on that defense.
Please.
When was the last time that you felt that the Chargers were not playing catch-up football? I mean, it seems like it's been forever since we've said anything of that sort. So to me, if your defense can rank anywhere between like the 15 and 18 range, I think you still win a number of different games having it ranked like that.
Yeah, and not saying it's a top 5 or 6 defense is not a bad thing. Like that's not poo-pooing the defense. I think the defense is going to be far better than they were last year. But it's hard to go from worst to first, proverbially. Like that's hard to do. Let's keep this thing going, Jake. So we last ended with Saints,
You're on the
Browns,
Cardinals.
Titans.
Saints, Browns, Titans. If you wouldn't mind, could you go back to where you were in the schedule video? Because I really need you to play out some of these last ones. I know you went directly to that last week in the Raiders, but you need to bring it back because there was a couple gems in here that were just fantastic.
Yes. Where would you like me?
Bring it back to the Tampa Bay one.
Tampa Bay.
Oh, sorry. You're going the wrong direction there, sir.
There we go. Tampa Bay Bucks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Actually, go right behind this because this was fantastic. Sorry, go right before the Buccaneers. This is Baker dancing into the kitchen right here. So everybody knows what took place with this. You know, it's so good that now you even if you go back to that, Dan, did you catch that was on the wall and who that was? Right there. Pat McAfee Court. You got Pat McAfee up here talking about this, and
AJ Hawk.
Yes, with everything that has taken place with this particular Chiefs fan individual who even, I guess, has gotten so much notoriety that he's now having some documentary that's made about him. But we all know what ended up coming from this.
There's Travis Kelce's mom.
pull it back a little bit more right before this Chiefs week. This right here. This was fan. Okay, go to the beginning. This is the Atlanta Falcons. This is fantastic. So, okay, go right from here. So here's Kirk Cousins jamming out in Atlanta. Go a little bit forward here. Everybody's dancing, having a good time.
Michael Vick jerseys. Great.
Keep going. Going.
Wait, look at the back.
Yeah. Correct me
who the F did I marry?
Keep going, because this is so good. Keep going.
Wait, who's out in the back? Who's out in the back? I see there's some Bijan sauce.
Some people I think in the chats know who these are, which apologies for me because I did not know who they were.
DJ Kirko chains.
I see 21. Now, Dan, right here, look at this. This is
28-3.
This is Penix. It is Washington jersey at number 9 strolling up to the club. and look what ends up happening. Go ahead, just play this all the way through.
Hold on, real quick. The OnlyFans here from the Atlanta Hawks here on the left-hand side. You got happy hour.
Yeah, look at that.
28-3.
Nobody in Atlanta likes to talk about the 28-3 numbers.
Oh my!
But just play this real quick, just from when Penix walks in the door. This is great. So he comes to the door. And then, oh my God, Kirk Cousins just drops the headphones and gets so off.
Wait, but look at the face at the end. I'm fine. I was
like, oh, that was fantastic. Okay, so now go past this. We saw this with the Chiefs already. There's Baker once again in the kitchen. Kitchen ends up catching on fire.
What is this? What is he making? What is that?
I thought it almost looked like a weird omelet, and then I thought, is it pizza? But I couldn't totally make that out. Okay, now look at this one, Dan. So this is the second matchup with the Broncos. So now he comes up to this wishing well. So then go forward a frame. So now you got wish for franchise quarterback, wish for cap space, wish for good uniforms. Now show what ends up.
They wish for cap space. Okay.
So they wish for cap space. They put their coin in there. Sounds like everything went okay. Fire goes up. He gets dropped on.
Did you mean dead cap? The wishing well error. Did you mean dead cap?
And it knocks him cold. Now look at this, Dan. Foxborough retirement home. You got Paul Pierce on a wheelchair sitting right here. It's like Paul Pierce is somewhere going, what did I do to deserve this?
That's amazing. Reference to the playoff game where he had to go doo-doo, so he took the wheelchair to the back.
Now play this through.
Wait, real quick. You see Tom Brady's jersey here inside. All right, so who's inside here? We got Drew, got Edelman. So
Brady's there painting a picture.
Who's this here on the left-hand side?
So you got there's a lot of different Boston references here. If you look on the far wall, you've got the Goodwill Hunting poster. How do you like them apples? House rules, the PSI. You got a lot of
play nice, stretch daily.
Yes,
inside voices.
You obviously have the Lombardi trophies because yes, you have to put those in there. But
what's up with the shoeless guy? Who's that? What's that reference to? I don't know what he's doing. The painter next to Brady.
Keep playing.
What he's up to. All right, keep going. Oh, what does he got?
Gillette Stadium in the back. Keep playing. Keep going.
Wait, what's the stadium?
So there's Gronk. There's Gronk.
He's just looking at the cube. Yes. Okay.
There's Gronk. You got Brady, and then the finale. Your dynasty has ended, but the town lives on. There's no reason to let this house stay empty. Would you like to restart? Which obviously, with Bill Belichick retiring and a new day and a new era for the New England Patriots.
Oh, that is good. And then I think somebody in the chat said Belichick's dog here in the back left.
Yes, that was the infamous picture that was taken during the NFL draft. I can't remember what year, but where the camera just went to find Bill Belichick, all they found was his dog.
Yep. Okay, real quick, let's look at this. So the Raiders, obviously, which by the way, I know it's a Chargers podcast and everything's, we try to be cordial, but that was kind of a funny moment little out of pocket when, we're getting railroaded, we being the team. And Austin Eckler jumps up at 63-7 and is amped about the first down. I just thought that was funny. But fast forward, look at the sphere here with a little emoji guy. Welcome to football's most notorious fans, the black hole. What's TBH? What's that?
The black hole.
Oh, duh. Okay. I was thinking it was to be hired, which would be hilarious. Let's see. Okay. Clown stuff.
We went through the QR code there.
I love that they have just a random trash can.
And then again, just the final chef's kiss.
Tom Telesco scrolls by
in this.
Okay, so let's look at this.
Now go through some of the credits here.
Okay, so we've got Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz just chilling. Looks like you got Chargers fans in the background.
The Harrison Butker one, dude. My God.
Harrison Butker just chilling in there. He's got flowers. He's making stuff ready. I got Dolphins fan. I'm assuming Dolphins. What's this reference to?
Yeah, I see a Dolphins shirt there.
Not sure what that is. Let's see. Is this Harrison Butker again? I think this is Butker again.
No.
Who's 8? Who's number 8? Who's that?
Well, that looks like it. First of all, that looks like it's a Jets jersey.
Oh, so is that Rodgers? Oh, okay. Reference to aliens and all the crazy conspiracy theories that he's about. That's what it is.
Oh, jeez. Wow. Okay. Wow.
Oh, this is too good. Oh, man. Okay.
See, even teams that the Chargers weren't even playing against this year, they're still throwing it out there. I love this. I love this because it's exactly what has made the Chargers social media group so great in their schedule release. And this is what takes place. Now, Dan, let's go back through because I know we finished off that video, but let's go back through some of the weeks to discuss all these storylines here.
All right, so let's finish out this schedule and get to our predictions and such because I know that's why a lot of folks are here. So we talked about week 8, 9, and 10 with Saints, Browns, Titans. And Jake, again, we had talked about this we put the juicy matchups that we thought were most important in here before we knew what the schedule was. And then when you find out the schedule, wouldn't you know it, 3 back-to-back games come right up here in weeks 11, 12, and 13. We've got week 11 against the Bengals. Bengals at Chargers.
Thank God. Thank God.
Which, by the way, I went to the Chargers at Bengals game, and they made him look pretty pedestrian.
When you did that, which year was that? Was that the year that they went back and forth one another?
That was the year that they went up big. Mike Davis had that crazy interception on the sidelines with a tip drill. They won big. They came back a little bit, but it was basically over at halftime.
Okay.
But that was the only time they've played together, and they lost.
But still, this is always a matchup of what you want to see between Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, considering that they were just picks away from one another when they were each drafted. But in general, Dan, this is once again going to that AFC North, which has turned out to be very competitive over the last couple of years. And you know that this is going to be another physical game. The team for the Bengals in general has changed over the last several months in terms of some people that they have on their personnel, some people that they don't. But I still think that this is going to be a great matchup between 2 great young quarterbacks. And from the Bengals standpoint, in terms of who they drafted, some other familiar names as it relates to Chris Jenkins in Michigan. One of Dan's favorites in terms of watching and overall prospects goes was Jermaine Burton. He was really high on Jermaine Burton.
Yep.
And, they did a lot to address the trenches and hopefully to improve that offensive line. And obviously for Joe Burrow returning off of injury that he sustained early last year. But I mean, how could you ever discount this? This is gonna be a very pivotal matchup in the AFC.
Yeah, who is the Bengals running back room right now? Joe Mixon's not there anymore. What's their running game look like? They've got Zach Moss.
Yes.
Right? Who else? Chase Brown, their running games. I'm curious to see what the running game looks like, because that was one of the things that helped them, I think, was like their balanced attack and helped Joe Burrow a ton, where he didn't have to do as much and have to wear a Superman cape. It kind of feels like, and I don't know, we'll see. Tyler Boyd's not there anymore. It's interesting, the trajectory of these quarterbacks. The Bengals gave Joe Burrow so much help. And you go back and look at how Joe Burrow played in the games that mattered versus, and who won the games, quote unquote, versus like the defense and the supporting cast. I remember a lot of games that Joe Burrow won that were in the low 20s or teens, that you put Justin Herbert in that situation, they lose almost every single one, because there's no way their defense was stopping them. Now, the Bengals, they're in that contract now with Joe Burrow, so there's a lot less resources they can allow to help him. They lose some receiver. We'll see what happens with T. Higgins later on in the season. They lose Joe Mixon. Can he carry him? I'm not sure. Week 11 in the books. Week 12 right afterwards. I think this is the one that most people are most excited about. The Harbaugh Bowl. Week 12, Ravens at Chargers.
Yep.
Harbaugh versus Harbaugh. This was a grueling game to watch last year. And the Chargers, give them credit. They were in this one for most of the game.
Until
this
the
was
fourth
one
quarter.
until, and even it was until the very end. And they tried, valiant effort, and that was kind of like the turning point in the entire season. They had to win that one, and they just couldn't. This is a big one. And sandwich in between two other games that are huge. How do you see this one shaking out? I mean, the obvious Harbaugh storylines.
I mean, Dan, the obvious Harbaugh storylines, Ravens versus Ravens West, considering, remember, we talked about how much coaching turnover happened with the Chargers alone. I cannot remember a previous coaching staff that lost more people from their staff alone than the Baltimore Ravens. Honestly, I mean, they were going everywhere in terms of what you're talking about, positional coaches, that some of them end up going on to become head coaches. I mean, they lost a lot of personnel in terms of that coaching staff. And
Mike
obviously,
McDonald's not there.
Yes, and a lot. Joe Ortiz coming over, and you get Gus Edwards, you get J.K. Dobbins, you get Bradley Bozeman, you get Hayden Hurst. I mean, outside of Harbaugh,
they lost Patrick Queen.
Yes. Yep. Outside of the Harbaughs, there's so many interconnecting pieces here. And the interesting thing about that was too, Dan, is that, it was bittersweet for me to watch last year. And and I know from a lot of other people's perspective as well, to see the game that Zay Flowers had against the Chargers to finish that one off. And then to hear Joe Ortiz on Kay Adams earlier this week talk about, everybody was the comparison because Quentin Johnston was taken right before Zay Flowers, and Joe Ortiz saying that they saw a lot of things that they liked about Quentin Johnston, that they felt that they would ultimately fit the offense that they wanted to run. This is one of the reasons why I come into this season for Quentin Johnston optimistically. And I know from everybody else in terms of the brutal rookie season that Quentin Johnston had, and it was a rough one. Now you have Jim Harbaugh, who, if you go back just a couple years in the college playoff, Quentin Johnston had a really good game against Jim Harbaugh and his defense in Michigan. And I don't think there's any question that Quentin Johnston knows that he has to come in and make it work. The more important thing that I liked about what Joe Ortiz said about Quentin Johnston, Dan, is that there was nothing that he said that ultimately made it seem like, was, I don't want to say necessarily a guarantee, because I don't think that this is going to be a situation where, if he's not doing good, that he's ultimately going to be shown the door. But he basically made it said, like, everything that is going to progress from here is going to be on Quentin Johnston. And honestly, I think that Jim Harbaugh knows exactly what he wants to do with Quentin Johnston. So, as I've said plenty of times, I don't expect a 1,000-yard receiver to come out of this offense whatsoever, but I definitely expect a vast improvement in terms of overall production from Quentin Johnston. Now, he doesn't have very high to go. The bar is very low as it currently stands. But yes, I would expect a very big jump in improvement. Not necessarily in the numbers, but in what he contributes to this team.
Yeah, we're rounding out the back half of the schedule before we give our predictions, which I'm sure Jake is very excited for. Jake, don't forget to put your predictions at the back end of this. Be ready. We have a couple questions here for folks in the chat. You know the drill. If not, first off, please hit that like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts, wherever you guys do it. Couple questions. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll try to weave these throughout the discussion. A couple questions here, Jake. How do you guys like the odds of us going 5-1 in the division? I don't like those odds. Just to
no. Look, first of all, Alan, I love your optimism. You fit right in with Dan, and even from Dan's standpoint, to say that he doesn't like it shows you where his optimism currently stands. So again, I love where your perspective's at. Winning divisional games is the easiest way to the playoffs. But as much as we believe that Jim Harbaugh has brought in a culture change already in the few months that he has been with this team, and ultimately how that's going to translate to wins and losses on the football field, look, there is going to be stumbles here and there. There is going to be stumbles. The unfortunate part about it is that every other team in the league was probably hoping that Jim Harbaugh didn't go to the Chargers, but they're prepared. I guarantee you they're going to know that they're going to be in for a dogfight when they come to play them. The Chargers are not, I don't think that the Chargers are going to surprise anybody. I think they're going to, in terms of how good they're going to be, they may surprise people on how different their offense is deployed. But I don't think that any opponent coming in to play the Chargers this week is going to underestimate them. Don't make that mistake. So this is still going to be a very, very competitive goal to get to the playoffs, and 5-1 in the division, I think, is just outstretching it just a little much. I'd be fine with, I would love to say 4-2, to where you say, okay, if you gave me both wins against the Broncos and the Raiders, and you end up losing both games to the Chiefs, I'd say that's more realistic to happen. But 5-1, I can't comfortably say that right now.
Kevin Koenig said, glad Ortiz didn't gas up QJ, though. Said it straight up. It's up to him. Agreed. And that's something that I do admire about this coaching staff and everyone that we've seen so far, is they are pretty honest and transparent with how they feel. And they're not going to say something that they don't mean. And they're pretty true to their word. But I agree with you. And look, I'm not excusing away Quentin Johnston's rookie year. Like, there's a lot of it that was on him. But there was also a lot that was not on him, that he was given no favors by the coaching staff and the scheme and some of the injuries that were ahead of him. And I think there was probably a lot of maybe unfair expectations, just given how prolific some of these crazy top-end wide receivers go off in the rookie year. Quentin Johnston had a bad rookie year. That's like period, end of story. But that does not mean that Quentin Johnston is going to be a bad player in the NFL long-term. I think there's a lot of things that went against him. There's a lot of things he needed to learn, and there's a lot of things that he will learn. And if there was one staff to do so, it's this one. So let's support him, see how he does. And heck, according to Moto Records, QJ over 1,000 yards, Jake. If it's Quentin that goes over 1,000 yards, I will be shook. And that's no slight to Quentin, but in a wide receiver room of Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey, Josh Palmer, and DJ Shark. There's no way. I just can't see him being the one that gets 1,000. Maybe. But given the style of offense that they're going for, and given the style of offense that I think they're going to target Quentin for, I just don't see it. Mighty, Jake. How was the Ben Herbert training book, Jake? Did you turn into John Wick?
Look, I just got back from a wedding in Cabo. I look like, I don't look anything like John Wick. I look like melted ice cream as it currently stands right now, honestly. And so if there is any time for me to go out and get the Ben Herbert workout video, I will admit this. I did find some videos and changing direction and, stretching, because I'm pushing 40. I need to implement that more into my workout. So I did find that a little bit more just in terms of, engaging the core better in the workout. So, but right now I could probably use the Ben Herbert workout video, honestly.
Me too. Me too. All right, Jake, let's get to this real quick. Week 13 through 18. 13. This is the back end of 3 straight juicy matchups that I had, and was obviously you have the Chiefs later on, but this was probably, other than the Chiefs, the one that I think excited for the simple fact that the Falcons have had a very good team on rock, a very good offense, especially on offense, sans quarterback. Quarterback has been dreadful, and they finally have one. But look at the weapons they have on that team. Running backs, tight ends, wide receivers. That offense is ready to cook.
Quarterback.
Backup quarterback. Yeah. That offense is ready to go. That offense is ready to go. And the defense, I'm not going to say it's a world beater by any means, but I think this is going to be a very entertaining game and one that I'm looking forward to. And I hope, I don't think they will, but do not overlook the Falcons like, oh, that's a win. Like that, there's no, like that. This is not that team anymore. It's not that team anymore. I'll say this, if the Chargers defense is what I hope it will be, between 10 and 17 for the year ranked, I think they're okay. I think the Chargers offense should be able to be efficient and effective. And I think the part, and you're talking about the difference of the Harbaugh era, I'm looking forward to seeing an offense that is purposeful, that they know their identity. We did not see a forking identity the entire damn season last year. That's what I'm looking forward to. A brand of football that I can point to and say, there it is. So, Chargers, Falcons, week 13. I think it's juicy. Rounding out the schedule, week 14 at the Chiefs, 15 against the Bucks, 16 Broncos. So, Bucks, Broncos are at home. Patriots, Raiders on the road to round out the season. Anything on those last 4 games? Bucks, or I guess I should say 5. Chiefs, Bucks, Broncos, Patriots, Raiders, before we get to our predictions.
Again, you finished the season off with 3 of your last 5 being divisional games. And as we have talked about, we have not seen this team with this coaching staff take a single snap yet. And I'm not here to try to bring the mood down on anybody. But
here comes the but. There it is.
All I'm simply saying is there are going to be some growing pains here and there. If we're talking about the rookie class, if we're talking about certain players and getting adjusted, and obviously head coaches. But the difference that I feel with the people that have the controls now, as opposed to what I have seen the last few years, is how they're going to attack their wins, or excuse me, how they're going to attack their losses as strongly as they're going to attack their wins. And just from listening to Steve Clinkscale, this is not Jesse Minter talking. This is not Jim Harbaugh talking. But this is the message that has basically resonated in that locker room, is that how they're going to develop players. And whether we're talking about rookie players or veterans that have been on this team for a long time, one of the biggest issues for the Chargers overall over the last 3 years has been the ability to adapt. We have seen too many times where it is one team for the Chargers in the first half and a completely different team for them in the second half, and they just do not have any answers for what the opposition is thrown at them. That happened too many times with the veteran coaches that went up against Brandon Staley. He didn't have an answer for it. How many times, Dan, did we have to go through when we were counting the weeks that the Chargers couldn't even put one in the end zone in the third quarter? I have more faith in the ability to find ways to adapt with this coaching staff that has now been put together than years past. Will it be flawless? No. Will it be perfect? No. But there will be a much better competitive Charger squad than we have seen in a very, very long time. And that ultimately is what's going to translate in the win-loss record.
I'm with you. Jjins06. The Chargers aren't going to reach final form this season, but they should be better at closing games. Kevin says, Chargers lost the Titans week 2. The only way you lose that game is coaching. That was when I knew the 2023 season was a joke. The other game that they had no business losing was that Packers game. And I know the Packers went on to do good things, but that Packers game was just like gut-wrenching. It was just absolute gut-wrenching. Okay, Jake, we've reached that time. Predictions. So, off the jump, let's just go week by week. Let's do it.
So
You tally up yours.
Okay.
I will tally up mine. So keep your number on you.
Okay.
Week 1, home against the Raiders.
You know, I'm gonna chalk that up as a win. And I know what I was talking about. One of the biggest matchups to watch, honestly, is Joe Alt versus Max Crosby, which is going to be a very tough matchup for him in week 1. But the remaining Chargers players that are in that locker room right now that had to basically sit with this for weeks before the season ended last year and have to watch that score and everything that came from the fallout of that, you better believe that some people are coming back with a chip on their shoulder for this one. If already, because you have such a huge divisional rivalry with the Raiders. Whenever the Chargers have opened the season traditionally against the Raiders in the past, it's always been a very tough game. And I don't expect anything differently here, but it's not like it's going to be a 63-7 shellacking for the Chargers. But I would expect that they're coming back with some added motivation here. So I'll definitely chalk this one up as a week 1 win. For the Panthers, I will chalk this one up as a win as well. Pittsburgh, I'm telling you, this is going to be one of those. I think this is going to be very close to what you could call one of those Baltimore Steelers, Raven Steelers type matchups, where it could totally end up being a low scoring game, very physical, very defensive reliant. I guess the difference would probably be because of who you got at quarterback. I'll go ahead and I'll give it to the Chargers on this one. So,
all right. So
listen to me now. I'm predicting a 3-0 to start when traditionally the Chargers don't do stuff like that.
Yeah. Folks in the chat, give us your season predictions. I will give you, I'm saying 11-6, and I'm going to get through my numbers as we go through. I have 11-6. Let us know what you believe. So I have the Chargers going 2-1 in this stretch, beating the Raiders, beating the Panthers, and losing to the Steelers. Again, I'm done talking about on paper, all of that jazz. The Steelers are a tough team to beat with a terrible quarterback.
Yeah, and you know what? I forgot that this was at Pittsburgh, and I think that may have just completely flipped my prediction on that one. So
Are you changing already?
Yeah, I'll go 2-1 with you. I'll go 2-1 with you.
All right. So then week 4 at the Broncos. Week 5 is the bye. Oh, I already skipped it. Sorry. Week 4 is the Chiefs, then the bye. So Chiefs, Broncos, Cardinals. How do you see them going there?
This might be another reason why it should be 2-1 to start, because you know that after the Steelers, you have this game that you're gonna have to be ready for. And thankfully for the timing in this, it's at SoFi. You just have to believe that Jim Harbaugh is mentioning the Kansas City Chiefs in every single conversation that he can, that's possible, in what their objectives are for this season. And damn it, screw it. I'm going to be bold.
Woo!
I felt that, the Chargers could split with the Chiefs this year. And this is more me being reliant on who is at the head coaching position as it stands right now. So because this one in particular is at SoFi, yes, let's go.
All right. I have the Chargers losing this one, going to 2-2. Again, I have 11-6 toward the end of the season, but at this point, they'll be 2-2 until they beat the Chiefs. I'm going to say they're going to lose to the Chiefs because they always end up, or have always, I know this is not the past anymore, but they always play them tough, quote unquote. And they always have their number, quote unquote. And then they always lose because of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid. That's just, the water's wet. Chiefs always win those games. Until it happens differently, I'm going to go different. I'm going to keep it the same. Broncos, Cardinals, I have both of those as wins. Do you?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to week 8, 9, and 10. Saints, Browns, Titans. Home against the Saints and Titans. Away against the Browns. What say you?
So in here is where the Chargers are going to falter a little bit. I think
I have 3-0 in this division.
You have
in this division.
you
I
have 3-0.
Yep.
I think the Chargers are going to lose at least one of these games. And maybe I'm looking at it as the Browns possibly. Maybe I'm looking at it as the Titans possibly. But I see them going 2-1 in this stretch at least. I can't necessarily predict which one in particular, but I see them going 2-1 here.
Okay, so Saints, Browns, Titans, you have them going 2-1. Then this is where it gets juicy. Titans, Bengals, Ravens, Falcons. Titans, I have a win. Bengals, I have a loss. Ravens, as much as I want to say it's a win, I have that as a loss. And then the Falcons, I have as a win. What say you?
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm gonna go with you again on this one. I would love for the Chargers to split between the Bengals and the Ravens, whichever one ends up being a win. This one's tough just because you have one of the better quarterbacks in this league that you have to face off of. And then, of course, the huge Harbaugh week that is just going to be ultra competitive between both brothers coaching against one another. Players aside, it's still going to be a fantastic game. Yeah.
That's tough, right?
I would have him going 1-2 in this stretch.
Okay. Ryan asked, why not win against the Chiefs? I gave you all the reasons. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid. Cool. Next question. Kevin says, not predicting wins with the Chiefs until we actually beat them. It's just smart business.
Yeah. Hey, maybe this is what optimism does to you. And maybe this is me coming in with trying to put on the Harbaugh attitude. Not saying that they're going to do this whatsoever. It's just what I think that their whole mentality is driven towards. Every single season, the Chargers should be knowing that they're going to have to contend and beat the Chiefs. That's what they have to do. But to Dan's point, until you do it, you can't necessarily predict it. But there have been those stretches where the Chargers end up coming out and surprising you with one game here or one game there in a game that they're not supposed to win. And this might be that one game that I'm talking about. And I say it again, based off the man who now holds the head coaching position.
Yep. All right. Okay. Let's do Chiefs, Bucks. Have us winning against the Bucks, losing against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
So they're going 0-2 against the Chiefs, in my opinion.
I'll have them splitting with the Chiefs here. So this will be obviously going to Arrowhead is ridiculous to play. But I still think that they'll end up losing this game here. I'll count the win against the Bucks. Yes.
And then last two, Patriots, Raiders.
Oh, and the Broncos. Sorry. You missed the Broncos.
Sorry. I was forgetting the Broncos, apparently. Broncos, Patriots, Raiders. Broncos, I have them winning that one. Patriots, I have them winning that one. Raiders, I have them losing that one.
Something, I face value, I would go ahead and I would just say, yeah, this is a 3-0 sweep. You're going to finish the season strong, and hopefully they do that. Something just tells me that it's going to be a 2-1 finish, and I can't predict where, but that's where I've got it.
Okay, so looking at the numbers now, if I go to mine, this is how I have it: 11-6. And when we were talking about it out loud, it sounded worse than seeing it on paper.
Yeah.
Looking at the schedule here, we just go home versus away. Home team wins against the Broncos, Raiders, Saints, Bucks, Titans. Those 5 games should be wins. Those should be wins. The other 3 teams that they're playing at home are better than they are historically. And you can argue still, who knows? Until they do it, I'm going to predict that they don't. Same thing on the right-hand side. Broncos, Chiefs, Raiders. I have them splitting with the Raiders. I have them beating the Broncos twice. Browns, that's probably even matchup. I see them winning that one. The Steelers, that's just a tough one. Then those other 4 on the road, Falcons, Panthers, Patriots, Cardinals, I see them all winning. That's 11-6. Jake?
I'm recapping. I'm recapping my record prediction here. It's a flex between 12-5 and 11-6. Honestly,
That's that Jake Hefner's got 12-5, which means you have. I believe that means you have the Chargers. Do you have the Chargers beating the Raiders twice?
Like I said, that last 3-game stretch, I predicted them going 2-1 with the Broncos, Patriots, and Raiders. I can't necessarily say which one it's going to end up, but I feel like that'll be the record that they'll come out to finish the season, because you go to New England, and obviously this is a very different coaching staff, different quarterback, different offense in general. But, you're still playing in New England. I kind of waver on that one. I think that you should be able to beat both of your division rivals in that week, but I would love to see him finish 3-0. I know you predicted that part 3-0, Dan. But
That's
overall,
that's a 2-1.
Or excuse me, or you said 2-1? I thought you had it finishing 3-0. Who did you have him losing to?
Let me go back to. Oh, it's Steelers, week 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the end of the season.
Oh, you said the beginning of the season.
Sorry, I meant the end of the season. The Broncos, Patriots, and Raiders to finish off the season. I thought you had that finishing 3-0.
I have them losing against the Raiders.
Losing against the Raiders to end the season. Okay, got it.
Because they win the game at home, lose the game on the road.
Then there you go. So yeah, mine honestly is a flex between 12-5 and 11-6. And yeah, to Dan's surprise, honestly, it's because traditionally I never went any higher than 10 wins when we were doing these previous predictions.
Fair.
And look at what the culture change does to you. How much confidence do you have? I will keep repeating this from when we had Trevor Sikkema on the show when he talked about Jim Harbaugh. Whatever it is that he wants to do, it's going to work, because he's found that success for so many years in so many different places. So is it going to be flawless? Is it going to be perfect? No. But in terms of getting this team back to being competitive and looking a hell of a lot better in the win-loss record, that I can believe, based off of what I have seen this team turn into, just from a personnel standpoint alone, and the message that's been sent out from January until now. My confidence is very high. Now, you got to go out there. You got to put it out on the field. Yes, this is not engaging in that I word talk, because we know that those things are going to happen throughout the season. But still, the confidence level should be a lot higher than what we have seen from the previous regimes.
I'm with you. 5 more minutes, Chargers fans. If you have questions, we're going to try to go rapid fire towards the end of this as we continue out. Kevin Koenig says, it's May, Jake. It's Homer season. 17-0.
Should have just been the easy prediction right off the bat. This show could have been wrapped up in 5 minutes.
Eat, sleep, football, win football games.
Yeah.
That's it. Robert D says, donkeys and faders, we always split with them most years. Yeah.
Most years.
Let's see. Primetime says, you can bet Harbaugh is using that 63-21 as motivation.
As for a guy who, whether you want to call it quirky or weird or anything like that, but as many phrases as Jim Harbaugh has come up with during his coaching tenure, there will be no shortage of bulletin board material for him. And not just with the Raiders game. He's going to find it throughout the entirety of the season. He's going to figure it out.
I'm with you. Drew Soul says, lose to the Raiders at the end of the season because we already are in the playoffs and it's a meaningless game.
Was that your train of thought, Dan?
I'm not saying nothing. But pump your chest out when you say stuff like that, Drew Soul. I like that. Moto Record says, Harbaugh is tough and will squeeze everything out of his team. It's going to be like Marty days back in Qualcomm. We talked to Sean Merriman. And if you haven't got a chance to go watch or listen to that, he was gold and talked about all the similarities between this Chargers team, possibilities with Jim Harbaugh, and what you saw with Marty Ball and Smash Mouth football. I'd be all about it. I would be all about it. Bolt Stillo 93 says, my bold prediction is 13-4. 13-4. I think Sean Merriman had them at 12 wins. I think that's what he said he had him as prediction-wise.
Remember, the Chargers lost 5 games last year by 3 points or less. Yeah. As Sean Merriman said, you don't think that Jim Harbaugh can flip those 5 games?
No. I hope. That's the hope. Doesn't it feel like Harbaugh changed the culture and energy of this franchise? In short, yes. Yes.
That was felt from the night the announcement was done. If anybody can go back to that night and replay, Dan and I immediately just had to do, like, when the announcement came down, it was 2 minutes later, we were on this show talking about it. The engagement from the fan base that was up in arms and excitement about what had just gone on, what has taken place from there. This is where you kind of have to give a little bit of the cap to the organization to basically give the controls to Jim Harbaugh and say, look, you've got carte blanche to do whatever it is you want with this staff. Let's tear down the old foundations that we have not found success with. Build it up how you want. You go out and you get Jesse Minter. You go out and you get Ben Herbert. And everything that's now been installed, that you couple that with hirings of Nick Hardwick and Navarro Bowman and former players to come in and coach this staff. And it's the message that's been sent from Jim Harbaugh that you've seen from press conferences and the buy-in that's starting to happen now that we're getting players back into camp and to hear them talk about it. This has such a huge resonance. There's no question about it. From the moment that announcement came down, the enthusiasm that you see now in Chargers fans, and rightfully so, considering the caliber of head coach that you have at the helm, how does this not get you excited and pumped up? I understand I understand that this is a franchise that is used to doing a certain term that they made fun of the Chargers during the Raiders game last year on Amazon Prime. A phrase that we don't like to hear that often. You think that, again, we talked about things motivation. You think that Jim Harbaugh ain't going to use that one for motivation as well? The old culture needed to die. And this is how you have the phoenix rise from the ashes, essentially.
Talk me up. I like that. Let's see. Botillo says we always had a chance with Bum Staley. So let's imagine with Harbaugh now. Robert D says, no, it was an NFL record 8 games by 3 points or less. Staley has a hand in a few of those last games. Jake, let's real quick. Let's remember the 2023 season. Week 1, they lost 36-34 to the Dolphins. Week 2, 24-27 to the Titans. That's 2. Week 3, they win against the Vikings, 28-24. Week 4, 5, they lose against the Cowboys, 20-17. That's 3. Then, let's see, fast forward. They lose to the Lions, 41-38. The Packers, 23-20. They lose to the Bills, 24-22. That's 6. They lose to the Broncos, 9-16. That's 7. And lose to the Chiefs, 13-12. There's your 8.
Yeah, I think Jim Harbaugh could flip a number of those games.
I think you're right.
Damn straight.
Prime Time says that's some real shit, Jake. He was buying what you're selling. Look, there's a question here that I forgot about. Ooh, since Jim said Junior Colson is not wearing the green dot right away, who do you think is going to get it? Derwin?
Dan,
No.
I leave this one to you, Dan.
No. Junior Colson. I don't care what he says.
Even
I
though
think it's going to be Junior Colson.
Do you think that's maybe like not trying to, put him in this position already, since we're only talking about rookie mini camps with no pads?
Think about it. If you're a Chargers head coach and you go out there and say day one that your rookie linebacker is going to wear the green dot, he's going to be this and all that, knows all the answers to the test, and then fast forward, he's not. What does that say about the player? Not that it's even wrong, but what does that do to a player versus the opposite? Got to get him up to speed. He knows a lot of the answers, but got to get him going. It's probably not going to be there right away. Then let him ramp up, gets the green dot, bang, bing, bang, boom. I do not believe that it's not going to be Junior Colson wearing the green dot, because who else would it be?
I mean, your next logical thought would be Derwin, but Derwin's worn the green dot already, and everything that we've heard from Clinkscale and O'Leary for what they want to do with
think
Derwin.
they want him to do that?
No, take all the stuff that's been on Derwin's plate off of it. Allow him to have less responsibility. Look, this is not to say bringing down the caliber of player of what Derwin can handle, but Derwin's had to handle a lot of stuff over the last couple of years. You want to make it easier for him to get back to the form that we're all used to him playing? Put him in a position and around guys that he knows that can trust to do their job so that he can do his.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just don't see why it wouldn't be him. Rounding out here, we have tough role players, guys. Now that are way better than overpriced wide receivers who seem hurt most of the time. Keenan Allen was getting old. The doobie-doo says, I like your guys' takes. Thank you. Someone earlier, by the way, we're talking about the Raiders. Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer.
That's right.
Versus Derwin.
Two tight end sets. Yes.
Yeah. Week 1, you want Derwin focused on covering Bowers. Don't make him worry about everything else. Amen. Robert D. It has to be Colson. He knows defense already, guys. Yep. Let's see.
Do you need to put up what I asked you to put up anytime that we brought this up about Junior Colson?
I can do that if you'd like.
Dan has been on this, and it's been a fantastic take as it relates to Junior Colson. And Dan said it within days of the draft in terms of
the night of.
Excuse me. So that was the night of day 2. In terms of how vital Junior Colson was going to be. First of all, from when the Chargers ended up selecting him, it was a huge value hire. But look at this tweet from Dan. Quarterback aside, Chargers linebacker Junior Colson may end up being the most impactful selection of the entire NFL draft by any team. Now, you could take that as, Dan's pumping his chest out a little bit and saying by any team, by any linebacker, but just look at the intangibles here. You have a player who played under your now current head coach, also under his defensive coordinator, and in a system that has so many different moving parts and so many different players in it. He's the one cog that is most familiar with this defensive system. It would not shock me if there's players coming to him, even as a rookie, asking him, hey, what is it I need to do? It would not shock me in the least for this. And Dan and I have talked about Junior Colson going all the way back to the draft preparation. And when we were talking about the linebackers, and there were 4 linebackers that we said that Jesse Minter needed to get because of how he deployed his linebackers in coverage. Junior Colson was one of those. And where the Chargers got him in the 3rd round is actually ridiculous because he probably should have been off the board about 25 picks earlier. So to the previous question about saying, is it going to be anybody else but Junior Colson? To Dan's response again, it shouldn't be anybody else than Junior Colson. But Jim Harbaugh is going to give him that perception to go out and earn it. And I think he's going to earn it.
I do too. It all lines up. You talked about him coming from the scheme that he's been playing in for years, playing with the coach he's been playing for 4 years, both head coach and defensive coordinator, playing in a linebacking room where there's no question he's starting, playing with a team that has a ton of turnover on defense, that is trying to bring about a new identity that, oh, by the way, his head coach of his previous team is trying to bring to LA and drafted him to do so. Oh, no, by the way, he's a pretty darn good football player too. So yeah, I think he's a green dot because they're going to give it to, if it was any Chargers fans, who are you giving it to on this team? There's no way I'm giving it to anybody else than him. Because I promise you, he does know and will know more about this scheme than anybody else on this team. And hell, even including maybe the coaches. He's out there playing it. And by the way, he played it with 1.5 broken hands last year. So I've been bullish on him for a long time. Jake, we've had a ton of people in this, which is obviously because it's kind of a big day. Chargers fans are excited about their team, excited about the new schedule release. I have 11-5. Jake has either 12-5 Sorry, I have 11-6. Jake has 12-5 or 11-6. Right? Pick one. Commit. Which one are you doing? Which one are you doing? Come on.
I'm not
It's May.
I know, but I'm not gonna. I know my optimism is higher than what it has been in previous op seasons, but I can't go too far over the bar in this circumstance. So I'm gonna go with 11-6.
Okay. So Chargers fans, we now have the schedule. I am going to be at a lot of these games. I'm going to try to make one away game this year. Last year, I went to the Packers game. I'm kind of circling the Pittsburgh game. That could be fun. I'll be at most of the home games. So if you're going to be going to the home games, shout out. Let me know. Love to meet and greet. See you guys. I'll be at Thunder Rally. Jake, you heading to any games this year?
Yes, because I have not gotten a chance to go to games over the last couple of years for a variety of different reasons, but it's on my bingo card. Yes.
Beautiful. Look, Chargers fans, we got a lot in store for you. Special guest episode for you tomorrow. Got a special guest episode next week, and I believe the week after. I think we're going.
We're stacking them like Clink Scale talked about. Just keep stacking.
Yes, we're stacking bricks. We are stacking bricks day by day, and then we're going to have a freaking mansion by the end of this. But look,
I like the mentality, Dan.
Tons here. I know this was a long one. We went crazy. We got to go through the schedule release, some of the Easter eggs that were in the Sims release, which is pretty epic. The Pop Tarts thing, which is pretty funny. Shout out to the mascara. Went through week by week, went through predictions. If you have not done so already, please hit that like and subscribe. Helps us out a ton, like I said before. Jake, anything else you want to say to the great friends before we get on out of here?
Kevin Kernick in the chat right now saying, and now we enter the long, dark days of June, essentially. This is the unfortunate drawl of, and I talked about this right prior to the draft, because everybody was on such a high and for a very good reason in April. And then after the draft's over, you're like, okay, can we just get back to football? Can it just be August already? Can we just put on the pads and start hitting people? Let's just get to the preseason. Let's get them to play. And yes, it's nice seeing the rookies get in there, having the veterans mix up. Obviously, between now and the start of training camp, you have some, mandatory mini camps, some OTAs that are mixed in there. But June is going to be a rough month as it relates to seeing the guys out there, because all you want to do is just fast forward to the end of July to early August when the preseason kicks off. And especially with as much hype that is rolled around this team right now, you just want to see them go out there and compete. So buckle up, brace through it. June is definitely the drawl of the NFL season, but here we go.
This has been fun for Jake, myself, LA Football Network, Chargers Unleashed. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, hit that like and subscribe. Helps out a ton. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you find them, obviously. But until then, we will talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed.